So it's now the end of the day and I'm back home. I managed to cut out the 3 skirt panels I wanted and 5 of the 9 widths for the ruffles. I decided to do it by pulling out a thread at the sort of relevant measurements, which was slightly easier said than done, but it meant that all of them are now completely on the grain and straight. And while there's 2, there's like a couple that aren't quite the same. Like there's a little bit of variation in the width, they're not very precise, but they are all straight. I did try to do some pattern matching. The trouble was that the fabric at the seam allowance doesn't like repeat very well, and if I wanted to properly pattern match the panels I would have lost a lot of fabric, so I decided not to do that, more for the point of conserving fabric, because I want to make sure that I definitely have enough to do the sleeves and the ruffles. At the minute it's looking okay, but you know, just in case anything goes wrong or I have to extend something. So I also overlocked everything that I've cut out so far. I've still got 4 of the widths for the ruffles to do, but I can do those tomorrow instead. What else have I done? I've also threaded the loose ends of the overlockers back into the fabric. Normally I just cut them off, but I want it to last and this stuff frays like anything, so I've done that. The next steps would be to sew up the panels, so the skirt panels will be sewn up. I will leave the back open for now, but I'll mark roughly where I want the placket to go, and then I can start thinking about how I'm going to do that. And also I think the ruffle panels I need to do, and I also need to tack where the hemline needs to go on everything. So for the ruffles I'm not quite sure how to do that just yet, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to tack where the hemline goes and then see about getting some lace to go along the bottom just to edge it, and then I can fold it up and herringbone everything down so it's all secure. I think after thinking about it and after talking with Becky about how she's been doing her petticoat, I think I want to do box pleats for both the skirt and the ruffles, because it looks a lot more like ruffly, if that makes sense. So like if I did like pleats it would look quite flat, but with box pleats it sort of like pushes everything out more. So I think I'm going to do that. The skirt I will pleat onto the bodice directly, and the ruffles I think I will just do a big long strip of trim and then I can attach it to the skirt as and where I feel is appropriate. I think I'm not quite sure how to attach the ruffles to the skirt at the back, because there is the issue of I can't put it into the seam allowance. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I think I need to sew up the skirt before I can attach the ruffles to it, because I want it to be continuous all the way around, and otherwise I'd have to have a weird seam at the back which could look odd. So I will do that. Excuse me. For the rest of tonight, I think I'm going to try and get the panels all sewn together, and then I'm going to call it a night because I'm pretty tired. So tomorrow I want to focus on recutting the collar piece and getting that sorted, cutting out the apron front and starting to pleat the skirt onto the bodice. Yeah, I feel like there's something else I need to say. I don't think I said about it in the last memo, but I've resketched kind of what I have in mind now as like an updated version. I've decided to do like a big sleeve cap of the upholstery fabric and then have the big puff in the white cotton underneath that, so it's more reminiscent of one of my research images of the I think it's Victorian doll dress pattern that I was maybe considering scaling up and then thought better of it, because I quite like how the sort of shoulder silhouette is there, so I've tried to like replicate that a little bit, and it also means that the puff itself I've sort of brought down further, so it hits like the elbow a lot more, or even the forearm, to better sort of go with the images of my dolls that I have, because they all have very long sleeves but the puff is still there, and I don't want like long sleeves for this one, but I think having a slightly longer sleeve would help with the sort of puffness. Still to do, I briefly thought about starting pleating the waistband, because that'll be quite straightforward to do. Looking at the satin I've got again, it's almost like plasticky. I'm maybe having second thoughts about it, I'm not quite sure, but I will make it up and see how it looks on the collar, and then decide from there. But it means that if I do decide to make a little trim to go around the edge of the petticoat hem, I could potentially just cut it and then not hem it, because it doesn't seem to fray. I haven't like tested it extensively yet, but that would be a nice bonus. So I could just cut strips of that and then have done with it. So tomorrow will be the collar, doing the apron front. I've redrafted that pattern as well, because obviously the bodice shape changed a little bit in the fitting, so the apron front that I started working on is now doesn't fit, especially the shoulder. So I redrafted using the updated pattern of the bodice, using basically the same method. I found, however, I was originally going to incorporate the neckline into the neckline of the bodice, so it would be attached like sort of sandwiched between the collar and the bodice front, but after looking at how I wanted the shoulder straps to go over the shoulders, I realised that I wouldn't be able to have those. It would just be neater if I had it as like a separate piece that sort of slides under the collar, and then attaches at the waistband. I've also had the straps that go down the back. They sit quite nicely at the start of the placket on the back, so they will sort of tuck into the waistband there and sew into it there. I'm going to leave a lot of extra fabric there for adjustments and alterations, so if they need to be longer or shorter or whatever. I also decided to lower the neckline of the pattern as well, so that it wasn't flush against the neckline of the wasn't like flush against the collar, it's just sort of like just underneath, and I've sort of eased it off at the shoulders as well, so the strap going over the shoulder is a lot thinner, and that's also because of the dart at the shoulders, because my model is quite round shouldered, so I needed quite a large dart going over the back, or larger than I would put in normally, but then obviously it's a flat strip trying to go over a very rounded surface, so having a thinner strap will help stop it from sort of sticking out in weird angles, and also make it easier to, if any adjustments need to be made, it sort of, it's still going to look roughly the same, and it still covers up that dart quite nicely as well, so it looks like everything's all one piece. The front I also put quite a little bit closer to I basically put the edge of the apron bib on top of the dart on the bodice. I decided it would be better to have it closer because I want like a narrower front to it, but still be able to cover the dart. So I'm going to edge it with lace so it'll cover If it does sort of peek out, then it'll cover it, and it shouldn't be too obvious. What else? I think there was something else. Oh yes, talking to Rachel about cutting the panels and everything. I asked her about like pattern matching, and she basically came to the same conclusion as me, with it would just waste too much fabric to try and pattern match accurately. And as the skirt is being pleated, it's not going to be massively noticeable. She also said to overlock the selvages away, because there's a chance that they'll shrink, they behave differently to the rest of the fabric, and it can make the seams look wobbly, but also not to overlock the seams together, because that makes it difficult for adjusting. She pointed out that quite often, if something needs to be adjusted or repaired, fabric needs to be taken from like seam allowances or hemlines and stuff to help repair it. And especially because my fabric is quite unique, it would be good to try and have as much of that excess fabric sort of stashed away as possible. So I know I left larger seam allowances in the bodice, and I'm going to leave reasonable seam allowances in the skirt as well. So even though it's not likely to be adjusted seam wise, it would be more like rearranging the pleats. It would still have that option there. So hopefully that should be sufficient. Yes, so currently the plan is to get these panels sewn together tonight, finish uploading photos to Google Drive so that I can sort them and actually print off everything that I've meant to print off, so I can do that tomorrow. I've got the collar pattern to recut. The bodice pattern I unfortunately left at class. It's in my box, so I can't do anything on that tonight, but that's going to be a tomorrow job. And then Wednesday I can start looking at the petticoat and trying to figure out a recipe for making it, and then making up that quarter sample. So yeah, I think that covers everything from today. Yeah.